The article that's up now on the potential rule changes, and they're significant. And I thought it was interesting the way you laid it out, because I think this is a critical decision-making process and how it could impact a lot more than just player safety. I mean, it could impact the length of games, so much that goes into it. The story's great, well-researched. What were some of your bigger takeaways that you learned from there, and what direction do you think we're headed?
Well, a couple of things. The people in charge, the stakeholders, the rules committee, the commissioners now have taken this semantic approach to shortening games or protecting players or both. They're calling it exposures now for whatever reason. It used to be snaps, plays.
Oh, it's a COVID thing. Yeah, use exposure. I mean, it's everyone's buzzword now.
So an exposure to me signifies, you're exposing your body to some sort of harm every time, you have a football play. Duh, we know that. But that's what they're calling it. And so by framing it that way, they're making it a health and safety issue. Now, what is less important now these days is length of games. Multiple people that I talked to for this story, and I think a couple of them they're quoted are saying, I'm less worried about the length of game than what happens within the game. That used to be a thing. But I think what's come back, and I think, Danny, you agree with this, is that the fans don't necessarily care. They care about the commercials, watching on TV, the delay in games between the quarters, and they give some bank president a check for $30,000 or something. I think that can be fixed. But what fans love is getting there early, tailgating, staying late, enjoying the day. And that's just become less important. And so the stakeholders now are worried about what happens between the lines. If it shortens a game, it shortens a game. But that's not the number one priority.
So, Dennis, let me ask you the bigger picture here. They're probably going to make some kind of rule changes, as you noted. It seems like there's an urgency that they're showing now. And I don't want to just come out and say they never cared about player safety before, but in many cases, they just kind of paid lip service to it. And by they, I mean, the NCAA Rules Committee and whatnot. Why now? Why do they all of a sudden care about player safety so much?
It's a liability thing. They won't admit it. And the commissioners I talk, well, that's not really part of it. It's a big part of it. I call it the leaky roof theory. You buy a house and let's say it has a leaky roof. You tell the owners that before I buy this house, you got to fix the roof. So I think before college football goes forward, particularly college football playoff, in whatever form it goes forward in, has to fix the leaky roof. Not many people know this. Still, there are dozens of head trauma lawsuits going on all over the country, targeting schools, the NCAA, millions and millions of dollars. It's a reason that I wrote a story last fall about how the rules committee is not going backwards on targeting. We hear all this criticism about targeting. What's not going to happen is to make the penalty lighter. And I think the people in charge are particularly against this flagrant 1, flagrant 2, because it is going to delay the game more. But they're not going backwards on enforcement of it because they're worried about liability. What these trial lawyers have become savvy at, all the research is out there. They now can trace, what they call NCAA negligence on head trauma and student athlete welfare back to the 50s, according to them. If you go backwards on targeting, if you don't address this right now, then you're going to end up in court for years and years and years. So as college football moves on, as college football transitions to oversight, I think, by the college football playoff, I think they've got to get this piece of it fixed, whatever fixed means. We don't even know if this is going to work. It looks like it might work, but I know I talked about it with Danny, that, boy, the first down thing is going to be huge. Mm-hmm. It's what differentiates college football from the pros, and the pros fit nicely into that 3-hour window every Sunday and throughout the week. Does college football want to be that? And in 2006, when they tried to do something similar, it was an absolute disaster. Scoring went down. talking about, you guys remember this, when they started the clock inexplicably when toe met leather. That, and they shortened half times, which was fine. I think over time they forgot about the halftime thing. We know that. We go to games. It's as long as it is. But that one thing made games shorter. They dropped down to 64 plays per game. That's an NFL pace. It was the lowest scoring season still since 1991, and they completely changed it the next year. This is a very delicate, these are very delicate rule changes that have to be well thought out.
So, Dennis, I want to kind of pull on that string a little more. You said like the leaky house theory or the leaky roof theory. In this scenario, obviously, the house is the game of football.
Yeah.
But who is the buyer who is looking to take this over? Right? Is it just like are you just is there an existing party or is there a new buyer coming to take over governance and inherit the liability for the game of college football? Like that's interesting to me.
Yeah, we know from, the Transformation Committee, the NCAA rewriting the Constitution that, Division I, and particularly the Power Five, because that's what the whole thing is about, is going to be running the sports if they don't now. As I said, the college football playoff in its next iteration, I think, is going to be the overseer. They are going to be on the clock, responsible for one example, postgraduate health insurance. The Pac-12 has it now. They have a really good situation going there for their athletes, but I think there's going to be a lot of pressure from federal types, from Congress, and from people like the Knight Commission. Okay, if this is all you now, you're responsible for these kids, and that's part of that. Because this bubbled up, guys, from Greg Sankey says it bubbled up from the Football Leadership Conference last summer from the SEC. Particularly, the commissioners all met together in Las Vegas in December at the National Football Foundation dinner in Las Vegas and started putting this thing together to push through. On the Rules Committee, which can only change rules every other year. This is an active year where they can change years. So I think that has a lot to do with their thinking as stewards of the game. I just don't think it's a front burner item by the public because there's still, again, a lot of these lawsuits that tend to sink, athletic departments and already the NCAA into a legal morass.
So you say that they can do it every other year, and this is a year where you can change rules. So if they implement the rules, like the first down rule, if that goes in, and then as the season starts, we're a month and a half, 2 months into the season, and it's like, oh, wow, this is really drastically changing how many plays there are per game. We're seeing far less points scored, far less excitement, blah, 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 everything that's bad. Can they then rescind that rule after the season, or would they have to wait? Would the rule have to be in place for 2 years before they can rescind it?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to. That's a great question because in 2006, they were able to change rules every year, and they did. So I don't know the answer to that. That's really interesting. If we get stuck with bad rules, are we stuck for 2 years? I'm going to make that call when I get off. Thanks, Tom. That's good.
No problem.
And the thing that's interesting about that is it's not a subjective rule. Like it's got to be like if there's one thing, if you said, hey, we're going to emphasize targeting or something like that, the officials could just stop calling that. But it's not like you can just stop implementing the rule. This one's going to take place no matter what. So that it has a lot of severe implications to what it could mean. So
yeah, I think there's something else to think about here too in terms of the effect of the rules. And we're talking about on incomplete passes, having the ball ready for play, the clock starts. In other words, the referee has the ball, spots the ball, ready to go instead of the snap on incomplete passes. They changed that rules for runs out of bounds in 2008, and the game was largely unaffected. In fact, plays per game obviously went up from 2006. The combination of both those things with runs out of bounds and incomplete passes, not having to wait till the snap of the ball to start the clock, what is the cumulative effect of that? And what is the cumulative effect of first downs where the clock doesn't automatically stop on first down? So that's almost three things you have to put in there. And there are those that will say, oh, scoring goes down. Great for defenses. Back to what football used to be. But I think if it gets too restrictive and if there aren't enough plays to get in, I just personally think that's what makes college football, more unique. And I think you have, more better finishes and more points in the end because of that.
What a
Have
coach
you heard?
Oh, go ahead.
I know you talked to several commissioners and rules experts. What about the coaches? Have the coaches chimed in on this? Like to say, like, hey, this is going to impact our jobs and our opportunities to come back late in games. Like, what are the coaches that you've talked to said?
Yeah, I talked to Todd Berry, who's the executive director of the American Football Coaches Association, and they kind of have a neutral position on it. I think if you go from coach to coach and ask them what they want to do, if you went to Dave Clawson, who has run an average of 86 plays per game the last 3 years, he might have something to say about it. And I did not talk to him. But as Steve Shaw pointed out, the delicate balance, and Steve Shaw, the secretary rules editor of the NCAA Rules Committee, he pointed out it's really hard because it's not like the NFL where everybody's just kind of the same. You're talking about impacting everybody from Wake Forest, who's run 86 plays per game on average the last 3 years, to a Navy who's run, I can't remember the exact number, 59 per game. And we know why, because of the option offense. How does that impact both of those equally and fairly?
It's a really interesting question. And I'm not really do you think that's actually is that a concern of the rules committee, or is basically just like
losing
creativity,
losing the ability to have different styles? Like you would actually homogenize the way that the game is played potentially with these changes.
I don't know if it impacts Wake Forest as much as it would Navy, because Wake Forest, one of the things about the 2006 year is that many people say, and there's no quantitative evidence, that kind of ushered in the tempo, or at least the levels of tempo, because coaches who were running it then, well, screw this, we're going to get our plays in. Guys, get up, we're going to go, we're going to go fast, we're going to go tempo to combat this rule. I think the way what we're talking about, it would really impact Navy more, because they start running 49 plays per game. Do they have the ability to come back? Do they have to pass more if they are behind? Maybe that's the next story. Get Dave Clawson and Ken Nui-Matalolo in the same room and have them talk about it.
Have them strike up some kind of agreement on how we can do this.